in a coffee shop in a city, which is every coffee shop in every city on a day, which is every day. Hello, friends, and welcome to the 4th episode of Barista Unfiltered, a podcast dedicated to the life and times of baristas. They tell us what's brewing in their lives and work in this free-flowing and unfiltered podcast. I'm Jodie Lee.
And I'm Austin Miller.
And we're your hosts, and we are so grateful, even more grateful than we've ever been, that you've joined us for another episode. I have a few shout outs today. I cannot believe it's taken me this long to issue this first shout out to Mike Hines. He created our podcast art, which a lot of you are seeing because our podcast went live on October 25th. And it happened very suddenly. We thought it would take about 2 weeks for iTunes to find us and approve us. And it turned out that it happened a lot faster than that. So it happened like within 24 hours. So we're live now. And because of that, I got to give a shout out to all of our listeners and YouTube followers. Thanks so much for supporting us. Our YouTube channel has been viewed 111 times and we have 9 subscribers.
Yeah.
Our audio, I know, it's crazy. Our audio podcast has over 100 listens and the system estimates we have 43 listeners. It's really hard to get at the number of subscribers, and it's so difficult that iTunes won't even give you a number for that, even if you're the one hosting the podcast. And apparently it doesn't matter much because it's the loyal listener that helps a podcast prosper. And so that 43 listeners is some weird algorithm that Buzzsprout has come up with to tell us, like, these are your people. But I want to say that 91% of our listeners are in North America. Awesome. And then get this, 8% are European. So we're looking at you, Sweden, UK, Germany, and Ireland when we say thanks. And then we have 1 listener so far in Japan. So konnichiwa, Eugene. I learned how to say hello, friend in Japanese this morning. Just so I can thank you in your language. All right, today, our guest is Evan Johnson. He's a barista. He lives in San Francisco, California. And Austin's going to do most of the interviewing with him for this episode because they're good friends. And I'm going to turn that over to him in just a moment. Some of you are familiar with Jake Shell, who is a roaster that lives here in Lafayette. He's involved in starting up a roaster business. We're not going to get a weekly update from him this week, but just stay tuned. We're going to hear from him again soon. But for now, just sit tight and join me in getting to know Evan. Welcome to the podcast, friend.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Oh my gosh, we're so happy you're here. And I've heard so much about you. I'm excited to get to meet you myself. So our first question of all of our guests is, what kind of coffee did you have this morning? It is a little bit late, so maybe you're on your afternoon coffee, or who knows. It was Halloween last night, so this could be your morning. Tell us what's going on.
I ordered a large iced red eye. So I have an iced coffee right here. It's actually my first coffee of the day. I was a little bit of a late start this morning. So I was quick to my quick, easy, get the caffeine quick iced coffee drink.
It looks pretty big. How many ounces there are you drinking?
It's 20 ounces, and it's a nitro coffee that the Martha Brothers makes, which is in my neighborhood. So it's the closest coffee shop to my house. I can basically cross the street, and they know my order, and so that's why that's what I've got here.
That's the best, when a barista knows what you want, and yours is a language above words.
Yeah, it's sweet because the barista there knows that I've seen A Star Is Born multiple times. She's seen it twice, and I'm on my 3rd time. So we keep going in there, and that's kind of been our languages. So have you seen it any more times? Been listening to the soundtrack? What's your favorite song? It's cute.
I am desperate to see that song, that movie. I haven't seen it yet. But I love Lady Gaga.
I love Lady Gaga too.
Okay, so from here on, Austin's going to lead the interviewing. I'm just going to sit back and have a good time getting to know you.
Cool.
And me too. Even though I spent a lot of time with you, I'm hoping to learn some things about you that I didn't know already before this podcast today. I'm wondering, to start, we all have that first coffee shop that we work at, that first coffee shop job. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what got you into the industry and what was your first job in a coffee shop.
Well, let's see. My story with coffee begins probably as young as 11 or 12, there was a little coffee shop in my town, Pollock Pines, called the Pony Espresso. And it was, I lived in a town that was on the trail of the Pony Express. And my little town's called Pollock Pines, California, up in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. So real rural Northern California. And my dad used to play at the open mic, and he plays guitar. He's a folk singer. And being in that environment, I remember that was probably the first coffee shop environment that I was in that I thought, wow, this is a really cool thing that these people can just kind of hang out, and there's a culture here, everybody's reading, and you see people playing checkers, and it was a really cute little spot. And then in Placerville, which is about 20 minutes away where my high school was, I would go into the Placerville Coffee House, it was called, which is a really cool coffee shop in Placerville that is built into a mine. There's a you actually are inside of a mountain. It's pretty cool. So I would go there after high school before my mom would get off work to come pick me up or whatever, and then I got my driver's license. My first job at a coffee shop, I was 16, and it was a little drive-up coffee pagoda thing. It was called the Bean Barn, and it was I was there alone in this little coffee kind of drive-up pit stop, and people, the cars would kind of line up, and you'd be like, oh gosh, we're having a rush, and each car would pull up, and you do your best to get to everybody. Some cars would order 6 drinks, and you just you'd be all alone. So that was my first coffee job ever, was that one, the Bean Barn in Placerville.
That's crazy. I always wonder what it was like working in one of those. I figured it would be kind of like being in the old school photomat booth. Like you're sitting in a parking lot, and I don't know. And you're like, where do you go to the bathroom? What do you do?
It's sign or whatever, and yeah, it was pretty wild. We had a lot of smoothies, and bagels would slow us down. It was kind of like you did the best you could to go quickly, but yeah, it was kind of the first coffee job, and it was kind of a fast food type of a situation.
Yeah. And after that, so I think you probably kind of stepped up your career after that. Yeah. That was your entry. And then after that, you maybe got into some places that were a little bit more suited to you. Would you want to talk about some of the other coffee shops that you worked at between then and now?
Yeah. So then I think the next coffee shop I worked at was in Sacramento. It was called the Naked Lounge, and it's still there. They've expanded, and they now have several other locations, but I was at the original location in Sacramento, and Chris Pendarvis is the owner. He was this total radical dude who rode a skateboard, and was this business kind of alternative businessman. I'd never met a guy like him. He had long hair, and he was really kind of just a really big personality, and he made us take this test before getting hired. We had to study this book, and he it was kind of this very, you had to jump through all these hoops to get this job, and I thought, oh my gosh, why are we doing this for this coffee job? But I'm so glad I did, because we learned all about coffee and roasting, and all these. It was really a great education for it. That's where I started experimenting with latte art and things like that. Another place I worked was Cafe Melange, and that was another place I was at for a while too before moving to San Francisco.
I think some of those places too, where you really do have to jump through those hoops, and you feel like they're holding you to a higher standard. It's difficult, but it also gives you a lot more pride about what you do, and it makes it feel more like a career.
Yeah,
which is, you
had to wear black, and it was so any T-shirt that was black, primarily was allowed. So I still have. I'm wearing a black shirt now. I still happen to have a bunch of black T-shirts that I think I became a part of my wardrobe because of that job.
Which is a useful color to wear if you're doing coffee too.
Right. Yeah. No, I still, whenever I'm in Sacramento, I go in there and visit, and I like coffee culture, the people, the regulars, how there is that shorthand to get to know each other, and you can have a conversation once you know what they're ordering maybe, or you just they do a head nod, get in the usual, and you can check in about each other's lives and stuff. And I like that you don't have to leave your personality at the door. You don't have to, put on some kind of professional, you don't have to be someone else, or at certain shops, maybe that's more the case than others, but I've always worked at really casual mom and pop. I've never worked for corporate coffee or any big names. It's always been small, kind of independently owned coffee houses.
And speaking of the independently owned, I know that after that you moved to San Francisco to make it in the city, and the first place you landed is where we met each other, right? Spikes was your first shop in the cast, or in San Francisco, right?
I worked for 1 month So that tells you how good of a fit it was. I worked for 1 month at Dolores Park Cafe, and it was really kind of not quite a coffee shop. It was also a restaurant, a cafe, and there was so much kind of food prep, and we did a lot of juicing. And so I had, orange juice or orange, parts all over my shoes. At the end of the show, I'd have like fruit juice and stuff. It was really sticky and grody, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. It wasn't the kind of coffee house environment that I was used to because of being so close to Dolores Park. You got a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people just wanting to use the bathroom. And so after 1 month of that, I wandered into Spike's Coffee in the Castro and immediately felt like I want to work here. And I can remember where I was when I got the phone call from the manager, Bonnie, at the time that I got the job. And I was so excited because I really did feel like it was like a perfect home, a perfect place for me. Yeah.
And being like a new San Francisco person and trying to find your place in the community and in the neighborhood of the Castro, how would you say like Spike's helped you to sort of find your place in the city?
Well, I was 23 and I was from a small town, and I'd been openly gay since I was 14, but I'd never been a part of gay culture, gay community. And so it was really, the difference was night and day. I mean, for me to find a home where I could, practice what I had learned and make, great coffee drinks and have that kind of personal customer interaction was really wonderful. And the fact that I could be a part of this lineage of gay culture and feel connected to, a whole variety of generations, everything from the kids that go to the elementary school, the Harvey Milk Elementary School up the street, to, the old timers who've been living in the city for decades. And it really felt like I was woven into the fabric of the city, and it was really impactful. It made me kind of put down roots here in the city and feel at home. So it was a very big deal for me.
And I feel like you're an example of, like, a lot of people, they can think of something like doing coffee because it's, especially here in San Francisco, it's one of the lower paying occupations in the city. It's not terrible, I mean, if you go other places, like, they don't even get tips to sling burgers, which is crazy. So doing this kind of work, it is considered one of the lower wage things, but you have turned something that some people might see as a dead end job into a real link to opportunities in the city and making pathways. And I think if you think of it that way, like, it can be a really gratifying profession, even if it isn't the highest paying. It helps to tap you into a community that I think is good for a lot of people.
Well, I'm an artist, and I'm a performer, and a big part of my work as an artist is finding an audience. So, having a place where I can talk face to face with people and invite them to shows that I'm doing, even find collaborators to work on projects with. And also, I've at times been fundraising for shows and had like a GoFundMe account. Or been looking for donations for a raffle, or, there's been so many, I can't even count, benefits to just having the face-to-face interaction and having people know me over and being kind of the face of the neighborhood in a way for some people. It's been really invaluable. And the flexibility, is a big part of it, being able to ask for these days or not, take some time off, switch shifts with somebody, getting off at noon and having the rest of my day to, write or take a nap and then go to rehearsal or whatever, have a show in the evening. It's been a really nice fit for me, and I've supplemented with other things as well, but it's been a really great fit. I mean, I keep coming back. I've been at Spike's for 9.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he has me beat, actually. He's like the oldest timer barista there now.
Is he the world's longest? Is he vying for your post as the world's longest serving barista?
Well, he might be the Castro's longest serving barista.
That might be. No, I don't know. I do love it, and I hope to stay for many more years. Yeah.
And you've been talking about, the flexibility and working on other gigs. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the other, first of all, the paying gigs that you do. So, like, what are some other things that you do to make ends meet? Well,
I've been freelancing as a teacher for a while. I've been teaching. I started teaching in after-school arts programs, acting classes to kids. I got hired by the city about 7 years ago, Parks and Rec, and through the Parks and Rec Cultural Arts Division, they have a supervisor of dance and theater. My boss, Clove Galilee, shout out to Clove, and I have been working for her for 7 years, and so she's placed me at rec sites all around the city, and I've taught everything from improv to playwriting. I've directed student productions. She's really allowed me to expand and grow my programming, and I have a lot of freedom, to kind of pitch to her a class, an 8-week class or a 6-week class, And so I've just really learned to really enjoy being a teaching artist as well. So that's been a great way to make a living. And then I also work at a wine, a kind of an upscale wine bar and retail shop, liquor retail shop. So we have a little wine bar in the back, and people a whole array of wine and spirits. And I've learned a lot about that industry as well. So that's been really exciting. So
I kind of feel like that's like the new reality too. Like if you're working in coffee, it can lead to other gigs, or a lot of times people have like 2 or 3 things going on at once to bring the money in. And
I was at Spike's Coffee, and I think one of the after school arts coordinator knew that I was an actor and that I was doing a play, and she said, "Do you teach?" And I said, "Well, I not really, but I guess I'd love to try." And she said, "Well, we're looking for a drama teacher." So actually, Harvey Milk Elementary, right, which is just a few doors up from Spike's, I got that gig, which was my first teaching gig, from Spike's. And then, funny enough, the wine bar, the owner of Swirl, on Castro, also the wine bar, the owner Jerry at the time, it's since changed ownership, but Jerry saw me at Spike's, and he was a regular every day getting his coffee, and he said, "Hey, we're short staffed. Would you like to work a couple days a week?" So both of those, all of my jobs in the city have come from working at Spike's Coffee. So pretty cool.
And that's encouraging for people who do, I kind of want to reach out to the listeners here that might be baristas and say, like, because I feel like you're actually a better barista if you take pride in what you do, but realize that like it's not just about that like paycheck, but that you can expand your life through this career if you have the right mindset. And I think having some positivity behind the counter helps, because that allows you to make connections with the customer rather than seeing it as sort of a adversarial relationship where you're like, I gotta do this. I gotta wake up and go in the morning and make this Americano for this person. But if you're like happy about what you're doing and you're kind of like reaching out to people, I think you can really bloom beyond it and still enjoy what you're doing on your day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think everybody in every career, is looking for, they call it like work-life balance, like trying to find the right balance so that you can maintain a positive outlook and and give to your job, your best self, but also not feel like it's this burden or this, this big sacrifice or cross to bear that you have to go in and work every day. So I try to stay positive, and I enjoy that I, have figured out over these 9 years of living in San Francisco, kind of how to balance all of that. Cause it is, you have to figure that out, what's the right equation for me, like in terms of the amount of hours I can work and the type of work I'm doing and how to stay positive. Yeah.
I think you were a big part of what brought me into the Spikes family, actually, with that attitude and with the way that you reach out to people and kind of involve people in what you're working on. I know that like I came in as a customer one day and you were like, "I'm working on this one-man show about Jeffrey Dahmer." And I was like, "Holy shit, that sounds amazing." And I kind of, I went out, even though I didn't know the Spikes crew or anything. I was like, I gotta go see this. And I got a few friends to go with me. And that was kind of a part of me getting to know the crew at Spikes and come on as a barista eventually there. So I kind of wanted to also give you a chance to talk about some of your other creative pursuits that you've been doing. Like the one-man show with Jeffrey Dahmer, like I guess over the time when you were working at Spikes, what are some of the other projects that you worked on?
Well, after I did that play, which was called Don't Feel, The Death of Dahmer, which was a script that I had written kind of as a slam poetry. It was kind of a writing piece that I never really thought would be a full production, but I had written from his perspective on his own death, kind of like his life flashing before his eyes. And like I wrote this kind of strange thing. And when I moved to San Francisco, I fell into a community of artists, and I was dating a guy at the time who was a producer and kind of had access to this space. And so he really encouraged me to connect with the director and designers to make it a play. And after doing that, it was like one thing led to another. And I got a gig at a theater in town called New Conservatory Theater. And they invited me in to produce my second show, which at that point, I didn't know what that was going to be. But because I was also working at Spikes, kind of connecting with gay culture, I wanted to make a play about how my generation was, kind of in the shadow of the AIDS crisis and what came before me, and how, there was this big gap between older generations of gay men and the younger current generation. And so that began a process for me of interviewing people, many of them from Spikes, older gay men who had lived through the AIDS crisis, who lived in the neighborhood, worked in the neighborhood, and had seen, the devastation in the community. And I wanted to connect with them and hear their stories. And so I interviewed like 27, I think, older gay men. And it was a really incredible, one of those men was Danny Nicoletta, who was a regular at Spike's, always, his order, he gets the Lawrence blend, and, his coffee beans of choice that he comes in and gets. And, he's since moved up to Oregon, but he's a photographer who was around during Harvey Milk days. And he, was good friends of Harvey Milk. They had an actor playing him in the Milk movie. And he was just, very helpful and gave me a whole trove of documents to look at, photographs and video to look at from that time period I was researching. And my next play was called Pansy, which was about kind of this connection to the shadow. And, it was sort of a Peter Pan story of a character who had a nightclub in the 90s called Club Neverland. And he was dealing himself with AIDS, and he passes away and is sort of forgotten over the course of many years. And a modern day a young gay man, myself, who I was playing, discovers this box in the basement. And in the box is all these videos and photographs and, clothing and random. And so this is sort of about how this character from the modern day literally, tries on this other person's shoes and walks around and sort of starts to kind of emulate this other person from this other life and learn about them. And that time.
And I feel like that's like something that anybody who lives in San Francisco and rents an apartment where, there's like, you move into an apartment that's really old, usually, like it's been there, just for the people who don't live in San Francisco. Like we all live in these old houses that were built, in 1800 something. And when you walk in, you wonder about the people who came before you. And like, I think any of us would just be so freaking stoked to find like a box left behind of who lived there before, and like to kind of explore the life and wonder if the ghosts are like affecting your life to this present day.
That was my play, and that was a really wonderful experience of growing. I feel like I grew up in that process because I was working on it over the course of like 3 years actually, and eventually when it premiered, I got to invite Danny Nicoletta and other older gay men to come and speak with me on stage afterwards in kind of like a Q&A, so the performance itself happened, and then I would do these talkbacks with the audience and with these, I called them queer luminaries, and it was really great to honor them. And many of them said, many of the guests that I had come to the show would say that this is so unique to have somebody your age take an interest in us. And I felt like that was so powerful to really, to not just say like, hey, come see my show, but to also say like, hey, I see you, and I know that you went through this, and I want to learn, and I want to, honor that, and connect to you in some way. So that was a really, really wonderful experience. Yeah. And I was really grateful I got to do that.
Jodie, do you have any questions about that or anything you wanted to say?
I mean, I'm always curious when I meet an artist, where do your ideas come from?
Oh, I don't know. I got inspired from working at Spike's that time. I mean, Pansy was really born out of working every day in the Castro. I think during that time I was working 4 or 5 shifts a week. And so I was seeing, there was this kind of wonderful shorthand and slang and kind of, hey girl, hey, oh, hi, look, this queen over here, just like these sort of like wonderful ways of relating to older gay men that were sweet and intimate. And it wasn't threatening, and it wasn't always sexual. It was like, it was just like warm and loving. And it felt like we were part of this shared experience, and I really had never experienced that before. And I wanted to make a play that kind of allowed that to happen. And maybe, so I played a character who was very unattached and like the opening scene of the play was Michael, the modern day character, giving a tour of the Castro in a very kind of like bored, like apathetic, cynical, like I have to do this way. Like it was his job to give this tour of gay history, but he's kind of taking it all for granted, just waiting to get off the clock. And so his journey in the play was going from that to, in the end, really seeing and understanding and feeling grateful and empowered even to be a part of this community and carrying the torch. And so I wanted to kind of stage that. And I guess where my ideas come from, I mean, I'm a writer primarily. I love writing. I love, I see sometimes an image or I hear something or see something, and it makes me want to start working on text. So I start mostly from writing. My last play I just produced in the spring was the result of me basically, again, like work-life balance. I was so overwhelmed by working so much. This was back in 2015. I was it was after Pansy had happened. Several years had gone by. I was kind of between projects, and I just needed to get away. And so I took a month off and went to Santa Barbara to go write and connect to my inspiration. And having that time to just sort of scratch for and dig for something to inspire me, I ended up writing a script, which became my play Barn Owl, which happened in the spring, which was about the Heaven's Gate cult in San Diego, the people who thought they were aliens, extraterrestrials, and they committed suicide but they thought they were just leaving their human bodies to go aboard a UFO. And I was writing from the perspective of a family member that was affected by that. So a son whose mom left to go become an alien or go join so I was it was sort of about trauma and loss and also make believe, and how we can sort of if you imagine something's real, or if you tell yourself something's real, how powerful that is. So so that happened in the spring, and it landed me where I'm at now, which is I'm a house artist at Counterpulse, which is a venue here in town. They offered me a spot as a house artist, so now I'm busy trying to get. Yes, so here I am now. That brings us to the current day, and I'm just kind of like getting started on this next thing. So but writing has always been a thing I've done, since I was very young, writing and performing.
So the other thing that I haven't brought up, and actually, a lot of people get to know you first through your drag persona, Martha T. Lipton, and I didn't. And I think you had mentioned something the other day, and I kind of wanted to ask you about it. So I feel like, especially in this day of RuPaul's Drag Race and like drag queens sort of being these like superstars, I feel like, doing drag was only like a very small part of your creative ventures here in the city. It was an important part because you used it to make, connections and express yourself. But I feel like what you had mentioned, and I agree, is that sometimes like people, when you do drag, they see you first and foremost as a drag queen. And then then your other pursuits are secondary. And I think that you really kind of bust through that sort of stereotype. And I was wondering if you felt like it was important to see beyond like somebody just as a drag performer and see them as a creative being, and how you kind of like push against that.
Well, and I'm not alone in that. I think there's a lot of people. We're lucky in the city of San Francisco to have so many creative cultures and kind of microclimates. It's like there's the dance community, there's the circus community, the burlesque community, the drag community, the theater community. You have all these communities that kind of brush up against each other. The clown community. I mean, you have all these like. They really are all their own thriving cultures. And so I'm just one of many who are kind of interdisciplinary, and I dabble in sometimes dance, sometimes theater, sometimes clown, sometimes burlesque, sometimes drag. I mean, Martha is a major part of my life. I can't discount that. I spent many years in the clubs performing for the queens and the kids out there, in the clubs doing drag as Martha T. Lipton. And she is a huge part of my life. I'm so grateful to that. And I think I embodied this theater lady, Martha, the failed actress. I embodied her because she's so confident. And I think it gave me a lot of confidence because I could go on stage and transform and be unrecognizable. And because she was this overly earnest, overly confident, performer, I could kind of come out of my shell and and give myself permission to be something that was that confident. So I really am grateful that I have been Martha for all these years. It is true that sometimes that is how people see me and how they know me. And I get called Martha, even if I'm dressed like this and, I haven't shaved in like a month. But, but if I'm walking around, hey, Martha, like if somebody, I respond and say, hey, and I'm proud of that. I'm grateful that people like Martha respond to her. But it is true that I sometimes feel like, my real true essence or who I am is not, I don't like to feel limited. I want to give myself, all the possibilities and feel like I have room to be all of the things that I want to express,
So for the viewer and the person who enjoys drag, I mean, I guess the way that I would say is like kind of consider somebody's drag persona as like their calling card. They're like public projection of like a lot of the other things that they have going on, and like maybe instead of just seeing them as a drag performer, like think about what they have going on behind that, and all the things that culminate into this performative act, which is, you know, the drag show.
And some drag performers come from a theater background or a performer background. Others come from a visual art background, and they really excel in creating the image, you know, the makeup, the hair. They make their own clothes. There's very creative, you know, artists in drag who are really image based, and then others that are more idea based or more, you know, making work that's very political or in my case very funny. I was always a comedian. I think my drag has always been more based in comedy, and in kind of this gender subversion comedy. It's less about, you know, being sexy, or less about you know, being clever or being cool or being you know, so there's a place for everything, and I can only speak for myself, but yeah, I've always been drawn to making people laugh and kind of giving people a good time in drag.
And thank you for that. That's awesome. So I kind of want to get back to coffee a little bit. Now that we've seen that, like, you have such a big life outside of coffee, and you do so many things. I mean, I've known you for a long time now, and I know that you have your hand in a lot of pots. As someone who manages a coffee shop, yeah, working with someone like you is such a pleasure. Someone who's been in the industry for a long time, as a mature worker, someone who knows how to deal with situations on a daily basis, and bring a lot of fun to the job. So as someone who makes the schedule and is just, you know, bare bones like manager, like it's a dream to have somebody like you around. And I wonder, like, what keeps you in it? Because I feel like at this point you don't really have to. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
And for me, I love the you have to be present to make good coffee. It's like, you know, you don't want to, if your mind is wandering, or if you're, you know, it'll show in your coffee. And like, I enjoy, you know, whether it's a cortado or a latte or, you know, a cappuccino, just like how attention to detail and being present and being with that individual beverage and giving it to that customer. It feels like it's like going above and beyond. It's like it's like if you give them, if you take the time and you're present, it feels like a nice gesture. It's like a bit of kindness, and I enjoy giving that to people, and I enjoy the practice of being mindful and present and staying connected to what I'm doing. And, you know, you can tell if somebody's rushing. You can tell if somebody is you know, is kind of just like going through the motions and you know, throwing it over the counter. It's like I like to try to practice taking my time, and yeah, I do have a lot of things going on, and so I think I lean into the fact that when I'm on the clock at Spikes making coffee, like, it's my time to just be present and be there, you know, and I can leave my life at the door and just be, you know, in that space.
And I have to say, I really appreciate having you around for that reason, because, you know, some of the younger people, they haven't learned that yet. They will. And just having that influence around and kind of passing that off to the younger people, I think is so important.
Yes.
And for that, I'm so glad you're here and fighting the fight with me, and like kind of inoculating the younger gays and the younger baristas, not just the gays, but the younger baristas into the scene, and kind of like, you know, showing them a way to even make the things that you could consider monotonous work in a way that's meaningful for yourself.
Yes, and I enjoy. Thank you, Austin, and I'm so glad as well. I remember Mike, the owner of Mike Delgado, the owner of our coffee shop Spikes, telling me I was the gay attaché. My role at Spikes was to kind of keep the gay spirit of the Castro, you know, in you know, just and I it's like, yeah, if I'm only there 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever I can be there for, I like, you know, the fact that, yeah, I've been there a while now, and I can relate to the customers on that level, and you know, and just by being myself and being there, I am grateful that that's valued, and I feel like you know, appreciated for that. And I also get to do the artwork. I am the curator of the Spikes art shows every month, and I really enjoy doing that and offering artists this, a place to hang their work. And networking a little bit, and I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, my friend is an amazing painter," and I'll say, "Oh, they should do an art show at Spikes. Like, give me their info. I'll, add them to the lineup." And I really enjoy that part as well, giving artists the space to share their work.
So speaking of like going to, kind of like working with the younger baristas and the new people coming in, what are, like, if you were to look at baristas in general, what are a few like hardships that you think, like stumbling blocks, I guess, in the world that you think that baristas often have to deal with?
Well, I think you already mentioned that it's not a lot of money. We're not, it's like that there's a sense of, if this is a job that's kind of just that you're passing through, you're looking for something else, you're really not present, you're really not there. It's like, I think that's a hard thing for both the customers and your fellow employees, because it just sucks the air out of the room. It's like, you're not, by kind of acting like this is your time, and the customers are taking it up, and that you'd rather be somewhere else. And I mean, I think that's just hard to be around in general, if somebody's kind of, and we all get, like, barista burnout is a real thing. If you're working too much, if you're, if you're in a situation where, you're, and it's happened to me where, everybody's life has highs and lows, it's hard to sometimes leave your life at the door and come in and, be in a service position to others. It's like, if your life is unraveling or things are tough, I've dealt with breakups and family stuff and all kinds of things. And, it is hard sometimes to stay in a position where you are feeling generous, and giving so much energy to others if your life is, if you're not, taking care of yourself. So I think self-care is really important, and being present. And I think having a balance of other things that round out your life, so that you're, when you are there, you can appreciate it for what it is.
So we're getting towards the end of the interview, and I just want to give you a moment to talk about anything that you've got coming up in the near future that you're working on right now.
Well, I am working on a family drama. It's a social drama. I've been really trying to think about where we are right now in America at this time, and with all the divisiveness. And so I'm making a play about a family with different ideologies kind of clash, that come together at this, at the dinner table. And it's kind of, right now I'm working on the character of the dad, and he's a conservative Trump supporter. He's dealing with the death of his gay son, and they had many years of not communicating. And he travels to San Francisco, where his son had been living, to pick up his ashes. And he is actually deciding between taking the ashes home to the family land where he always kind of wanted his son to live, or giving his son, letting his ashes go off the Golden Gate Bridge, which is where his son would have wanted. He knows, and he ultimately decides to do that, to be selfless and to do that. So it's kind of that I'm presenting that actually tomorrow. I have a monologue. It's a 12-minute monologue as the dad, and so that's why I've been growing out the facial hair. But I'm having a makeup artist age me to look like a 70-year-old man. And I've been practicing, like, talking in a low voice and relaxing and kind of this masculine thing. So it's another kind of drag for me to play an old white Republican man. that play is called Base, kind of around the idea of home, and also Trump's base. And it's I'm hoping to produce it at Counterpulse in the spring. But my website is evanjohnsonplays.com. So people can look up my work and stay connected to it through that.
Jodie, this is getting towards the end of my questions. Do you have anything that you want to ask Evan about?
I mean, I'm just overwhelmed at all of your energy. And what I'm hearing is that, you're sort of an actor everywhere you go. Like, and I don't mean this in a way like you're pretending, but like when you go on stage, so much of being on stage is about offering this moment to the people that are in your audience. And as a barista, you're doing the same thing, right? And truly offering someone a moment or an hour or a story means that you have to be fully present, and you have to leave all the other stuff behind you. It's a very mindful choice. Doesn't mean that you're completely disconnected from it. It just means like it just can't come on stage. right? And you probably are, you probably received a lot of training in that as a young person, and you're just rolling it out through everything you're involved in.
I love what you just said. And I think to remain artists, especially in today's climate where artists are so undervalued, and I mean, fame and celebrity are and commercialization of art and consumerism, you know, all of these things that artists are and all of us are living in this culture of, to remain hopeful and optimistic, to have a vision or an inspiration and to follow through. Like, it takes a lot of hope and it takes a lot of discipline. But I think what it really takes is, like, yeah, like you said, like, how can I just be in this moment now and carry the torch wherever I go, and like not feel like it's taken me through all through my 20s, you know, of like trying to figure that out. And yeah, I have to be myself wherever I go. I can't just sort of like, you know, and so I'm not pretending. I can't be pretending. I can't be like performing this person over in this part of my life and then this other person in this other part of my life. I have to somehow find the through line and be able to be myself when I'm showing up and teaching a class, or be myself at the coffee shop, like, or yeah, on stage. It's like approaching everything with the same kind of outlook, which is that, you know, being present, being here, being mindful, and just offering what is real and authentic in whatever circumstance I'm in. And yeah, I love how you put it, Jodie. That's exactly right.
I think that kind of attitude in this world is what heals people, and it's what connects us. So yeah, I think we all need to be like trying to be that, for not for ourselves. It of course helps our own lives to be more compassionate and understanding and present, but everyone else needs that from us.
Yes. And it's an opportunity as a barista to offer that, you know, in any service position. It's like, we've all had moments like that where somebody, whether it's a waiter or a waitress or a barista or, you know, someone, like, we've all had moments where it's like, wow, that person, that was a special interaction. That was above and beyond. And it's like, you know, you can't fake that or force that, but you have, in order to offer that, you have to be coming truthfully from a place of like, I see you as another human. I see your humanity. Whatever you know, bullshit's going on in my life and whatever bullshit's going on in your life, this right now is this moment. It might be very brief. And what I like about being a barista is it is brief. It's like a 2-minute interaction, a 1-minute interaction. It's like sometimes it's so quick, but it can really make all the difference. And I think that's something to always keep in mind.
One way that I often go about that is like, if I look at someone and they're like kind of clueless, maybe to the flow, to what's going on in the coffee shop, they're new there, they don't really know the right way to order, the right way to do this or that. Instead of like kind of like rolling your eyes, think this is somebody's mother, this is somebody's brother, this is somebody, you know, and like if you're with that family member that doesn't really know the flow where you are, they're a guest. Yeah. Like seeing someone behind the counter handle that in a way that's connected rather than a sort of like an eye rolling sort of reaction. I think it can make you feel a lot better as a person, and it can actually give you energy where you didn't know that you had it. And it can also give it to somebody else.
I think that curiosity is the world's best medicine. It's like how we can remain curious about each other and not let our expectations or projections, you know, dictate how that, like, the interaction is going to go. It's like really by being open and available and responsive to what happens is so much about what it is to be an actor and to be an artist and to be a musician, you know, but I think it applies in life to every situation. Is like, how can I look this person in the eyes or have this interaction with this person and be available to them and just like meet them where they are. And I don't have to leave myself behind, and I don't have to like impose all these things on them. You know, I can just sort of meet, you know, and I think curiosity is really gonna heal the world. We have to remain curious about each other.
I agree 1,000%. I think curiosity, when I look at the people I love the most and just enjoy the most, they're all intensely curious people. Doesn't matter if it's a 4-year-old playing with you know, a cricket, or my 97-year-old friend Vera, who still invites people into her home to play music.
Yeah.
Like, it's that curiosity about other people's lives. And if that you got that and you're genuine about it, and that's what's propelling you forward, like, you can't fail.
Yeah. And it's so important to have to get out of this like same like worldview where you're only with people who agree with you, only with people who are the same age as you or the same, it's like, it's so like what you said about being with friends of different ages. I have a friend, John, who's 84, and I go over to his house and we have like whiskey tastings. And it's like, that's kind of our thing, is like, Scotch tastings at John's house. And, and he's 84 years old. You know him, Austin. He's a customer from Spike's. That's how we met.
Yeah.
And, and he goes out disco dancing, every Thursday night at the 80s club, or, he's out at the 80s club, rocking it. And, he has a walker now. So his mobility is a little challenged, but he still goes out every week. And, it's people like him that keep me inspired, because if he can still be in San Francisco renting an apartment, going out to clubs, I'm like, hey, there's hope for me. He's a gay man, he's single, but he's living this great life. And, I feel like by looking out at the world and seeing people who are, living across all different types of experiences, and looking for that inspiration, looking for people who are those mentors who can inspire us. It's like, you're not going to always find them right in front of you, and, with people your own age. And I think young people learn that, because it's like, in school, you're all grouped together by age. You go through school and you're kind of generally with people the same age as you. So it's not until you get a little older and you kind of realize, like, hey, there's so much to learn and grow from older people and younger people. I learn a lot from my students too, learning from kids, seeing, and my nephew who's, 8, it's wonderful to have interactions with a wide variety of people. And
you do that a lot in your teaching and acting. I mean, I know that you've worked with kids, and you've had, you teach acting to kids, but you've also done a lot of work with senior citizens, which you did. And the last play that you worked on, I think that's so cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I love it too. I feel very blessed and fortunate. It feels very much like a gift that I get to do that, for sure. And that's the kind of thing, is like, if we can think about our lives in terms of what we get to do, not what we have to do. Think about like everything as an opportunity, to grow, to learn, to connect. Like just the reframing of the things that are a part of our daily lives. That it's not this burden that we have to do it. Because if you're looking at life that way, all this time's going to pass. You'll never get any living done. You'll always be, it'll be working in kind of but not, you won't be going anywhere. It won't feel like you're going anywhere. But if you think of things as, you get to do it, this is an opportunity, what's going to happen? I'm curious what will happen if I do that, or if I reach out to this person or follow my instinct. I can't tell you how many times I've said to somebody one of my best friends who I connected with, I said to her, "Are you a theater person?" And she said, "Why, yeah, I am. How'd you know?" And it's because I had an instinct, like, she's a theater person. It's like, sometimes we have these ideas, but we don't want to go out of our shell and connect to somebody. But it's like, there's something really in there, like those ideas, those inspirations, that flash of curiosity. It's like, we just got to listen and tune into ourselves more, I think. And I think that when we do that, good things happen.
I think we should let that sink in, stop the conversation here, and leave people with that, because that was amazing.
It's also amazing.
I think, thank you so much for appearing with us today. I think you have your official titles, there's barista, there's drag queen, there's playwright, there's teacher. And I think you could probably add podcaster to that list, because you're fantastic.
Thank you both so much for having me. I really have enjoyed talking with you guys. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
And there's the questions we always ask everybody, right? We do.
Yeah,
do that. I mean, we got real deep, and now we're going to go shallow again. But
hit me.
We don't have rules yet, so we typically like to ask, what are your favorite 3 coffee houses
in the world?
Yeah, in your life experience.
In the world, the whole fucking world.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to say Spike's Coffee. I'll have to say Martha Brothers, because it's my neighborhood spot, and that serves its own function. And then the Naked Lounge, where I learned all my training and where I get to go home to Sacramento and still feel connected to that community there. So those 3.
All right. That was amazing too. All right. I'll get those links in the show notes so you guys can go experience the great coffee houses that Evan has recommended. As we end this episode, we have huge thanks for Evan Johnson for being with us today. And we thank all you listeners for joining us. We want to hear from our listeners. Maybe you guys know a barista you want us to feature on the show. Maybe you've got a question about coffee, or you want us to talk about a particular topic and you know someone you would like for us to interview. Whatever your thoughts are, just send us your big ideas on that. Our email address is info at baristaunfiltered.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Since we've launched the podcast, now we're on Spotify and Stitcher and iTunes and Google Play. I mean, we're all over the place. If you want to find us, you can find us. And if you'd like to support our podcast, please visit our Patreon site. It's patreon.com /Barista Unfiltered. With Patreon, you can donate to the podcast in any amount, one time or on any kind of schedule that suits your budget. And with that, I'll just say, stay caffeinated, friends. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.